Everyone, it's Amadeus back again here with your weekly sound design tutorial, and today I'm going to do a much requested topic, which is how to get good supersaws. So today I'm going to show you how to go from this type of supersaw sound to this type of supersaw sound. So just to show you a little bit of what the first one was, this is basically your standard Serum supersaw, just using init patch saw preset, 16 voices of unison, turning down the detune a little bit. And that's suboptimal for a number of reasons that we're going to go over. So I think the main two reasons that that's not great are, one, the Serum wavetables are a little bit boring and sound a little bit overly digital is how some people describe them, and two, layering just regular saw wavetables with other saw wavetables is kind of doesn't sound great. And what we're going to actually want to do is layer saw wavetables with phase dispersed saw wavetables, which will make the sound a lot fuller. So how we're going to do that is two approaches generally. One, in order to get everything in Serum, by the way, all of the material in this tutorial is going to be Serum focused, so you're going to be able to drag in any sound that we do today and do it in Serum. What we're going to do is have two approaches to do this. One is sampling the wavetables of other synths in order to drag those into Serum, and two is phase dispersing wavetables in order to make them more interesting when we drag them into Serum. So the first way that we might go about getting a new wavetable would be probably just importing from the next most popular synth, I guess, which is Sylenth. And people really do like to use Sylenth for supersaws for a number of reasons, one of which is it's not as great as far as preventing aliasing, but that actually leads to some desirable characteristics in supersaws, as we'll go over. So in order to get silent sound within Serum, what we're going to do is we are going to create just a long note at C1 in Sylenth, and we are going to bring up init patch with preset init, and it's just going to sound like this, basically just exactly what you'd expect. We are going to bounce that in place and render that to the disk. And that's basically it as far as that part goes. What we're going to do, let's init this out. What we're going to do in order to get this sound into Serum is, this is a really cool trick that I learned from AU5. We're going to enter the note that we just played, which was C1, and we are going to go to the disk, and we are going to grab the thing that we just bounced out, which is the Sylenth wavetable, drag it right in there. And what we're going to do, what you can see about this is that it's not quite exactly the same as the Serum wavetable. There's a little bit of what's called aliasing at the peak of the wave, at the peak of the saw wave, kind of little jagged lines in here, and that from a DSP standpoint is probably undesirable. From a sound standpoint, it's actually pretty desirable, and it makes things sound a little bit more, I guess people perceive it as more analog. So that's one way that using Sylenth wavetables within Serum can help out your sound. And what this sounds like is you can hear that it sounds more like Sylenth than Serum already. So this is Serum. This is the Sylenth. Very subtle differences, but I think there are differences nonetheless, especially when you start stacking them, and that really adds up. So that covers the how you get other wavetables in from other synths. And just to remind you, I'm providing a link in the description to all of the wavetables that I generate today. You can get them for free as soon as you're done with this video. So that covers how to get material in from Sylenth. In the pack that I am providing, you can also get wavetables from Brainworx Oberhausen and UHE Diva, which are both really great analog synths that have really even more different characteristics of their saw patches than Sylenth does. So highly recommend checking that out. Those are just as, if not more, special. And so how we're going to get the phase dispersion effect, which is part 2, is there are two ways. One is you can get a operator here, and without any processing, it just sounds like this. Very boring. But what we're going to do is we are going to attempt phase dispersion by throwing a Ableton stock reverb on here. And what we're going to do is turn the pre-delay all the way down, take off the low cut, high cut, diffusion, network, chorus, stuff like that. I would turn down the decay time most of the way, turn down the stereo a little bit, make sure to turn dry wet all the way up, and turn size all the way down. And so what this is going to do is it's going to phase disperse the saw wavetable so that it is less in phase with itself. So what that sounds like is this. Without it, it sounds like this. And you can actually see this visually if we pull up an oscilloscope. Without it, it just sounds like, you can literally see that it's just a saw wave. With the reverb, very, very different. It works a lot better layered when you have it like this. So you can do the exact same thing, is just render this out to the disk and throw that wavetable in Serum. And method 2 of getting this phase dispersion effect actually relies on last week's tutorial, which was how to get FL Studio's Harmor Additive Synth in Ableton for free. Would recommend going and checking that out if you don't know how to do that. But we are going to call up Harmor, and we are going to basically just pull up the init patch, Harmor, default. Right now it's just a saw wave, but we're going to turn the randomness all the way down. And because Harmor is an additive synth, that's going to also have the effect of something pretty close to phase dispersion in the way that we just did with the reverb. And so when we throw this all together, what we're going to get is this. We are going to, here is a Serum patch with one oscillator being the Sylenth wavetable that we imported, and one oscillator being, actually in the pack there's both two additive synths, there's Harmor and Razor, where I did this method, and this is a Razor wavetable. Very similar sound, just a little bit different than Harmor. This is pretty straightforward. Wavetable positions don't matter a whole lot. You can futz with the unison and detune however you like. I'm turning the phase close to pretty much down a lot of the way. This is all pretty straightforward on this page, but on this page is where it gets a little bit more interesting. What we're doing here is multi-band compression, pretty standard OTT stuff in Serum. I probably messed with the gains on the individual bands a little bit. You can tweak those as you see fit. But one really interesting thing that we're doing here is we're actually kind of doing a little bit more phase dispersion by turning a reverb on here. And because we don't want the reverb to be kind of ringing out after the notes have finished playing, what I did actually is map the Serum envelope 1 to reverb wet. And so what that does is when this synth is playing, the reverb is going to be at like 30% wet or something like that. When it's not playing, it's going to be at 0% wet, so it's not going to ring out afterwards. And after that, I just took out a little bit of the bottom end and added a little bit of high end after that. That is all on this page. And the final thing, this is actually quite important, is I have mentioned in previous videos that using supersaw unison mode is really important. It emulates a little bit of the analog synth stacking modes as opposed to just doing a linear detune, which sounds pretty digital and boring. And on oscillator 1, I am doing actually a unison stack up 1 octave. So that just adds another octave on top of it. Kind of an easy way to add some more voices. And I think that really helps make the sound a little bit fuller and more interesting. And again, yeah, this is what I use in a lot of my tracks, something very similar to this. In general, the method of stacking a regular saw wave with a phase dispersed saw wave works pretty well, and I think that really helps make it sound full. Again, the final result sounds like this. After that, a little bit of post-processing here. I add a little bit of mid-range in Ableton's EQ8, and I actually took out some of the high range at 5 kilohertz. And I'm adding that back in actually with the Meg EQ4. Highly, highly recommend this EQ. But what that does is it just adds a little bit of a smoother sound than you typically get on the top end of the saws, just coming directly out of Serum. And that very, very slight tweak, but if you have this plugin, or something like it, I would definitely recommend trying that because it's a pretty general technique to attenuate and then add back with an analog EQ. People do that all the time in mastering, and I think it's pretty helpful for saws as well. So that is a little bit on how I do my supersaws. Hope this was helpful for you. If you found the pack that I am linking in the description helpful, and you end up using it, I would ask that you, if you would consider subscribing, that'd be awesome. If you don't, no worries. Thanks so much for watching, and I hope to see you next week.